Hello, hello. So we're here. All right. So welcome everybody to this live event organized by Impactscool Torino Future Hub. For those who don't know, Impactscool is a organization of future-oriented individuals and has the purpose of raising awareness on emerging and exponential technologies and their impact on society in order to contribute to a more proactive society where everybody can participate into adopting the best future possible. This is why our motto is the future is open source. So today we have an amazingly inspirational person with huge background in the tech and let's say tech for good industry. And today's topic is reimagining ability, tech, and ethics. We'll explore very particular arguments like algorithmic diversity and non-binarity in technology. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Yonah Welker.
Thank you so much, friends. I'm really happy to be here today. Yes, my name is Yonah Welker, and I've been working on intersection of technology and society since 2005. Over my journey, I've been involved in different stuff. I started my journey around 2004 or 5, mostly involved in hardware. Later, I'm really fell in love in data science and machine learning and work with many startups in this field. But nowadays, I'm definitely focused on things that I call algorithmic diversity and non-binary vision of technology. And that's what we discussed today with you. And I plan to tell you more about how exactly it works. And my goal is to push this mindset to the mainstream, designing better ecosystem, classes, medicine, education, smart cities, and so on. I try to push this mission through several directions. On one hand, I've been working to create a long life foundation to support research for the future of ability and diversity. Technology. At the same time, I started to collect micro portfolios of startup companies and emerging products, and there are several directions. It's a future of learning, well-being, and work. At the same time, I'm interested in such things as a gender and women and diversity products, and also sustainable circular materials and consumer products as well. Besides, I'm involved in many projects related to ethics and decentralization.
A cool thing would be to, I know you're doing a lot of events and speeches on this topic, on diversity, and you have a very strong and personal vocation. I would kick it off asking like, in your perspective from what you accumulated personally and in experience, what is diversity and why it's important to talk about it?
Yes, it's a very good question. And typically, when people start to think about diversity, I prefer to be focused not in term in definition, because there are many definitions, but more like a real life expression of this mindset. And so, how exactly it works? Einstein was dyslexic. And at the same time, he had an estimated IQ around 160. At the same time, there are individuals with autism who at the same time have just a super problem solving in data related skills. And that's why these people are actively hired by companies like Google or Amazon. Basically, diversity is idea that there is no the same brain, there is no the same type of talent, there is no the same type of ability, and that's why, in order to make you fully functional in society, environment, classroom, or workplace, you should be aligned with some type of a technology approach, learning philosophy, and basic logic how this environment is created and done.
Perfect. I would, from this point of view, go, if you like, also from your personal journey, your experience, so that our audience can also familiarize with your journey connect better, also to have like better questions and to go deeper on this one?
Yeah. First of all, sometimes people, when people explore that I had a health issues, they prefer to be focused on this part of the story. But I think it's not even the crucial part because I was always been kind of a technologist first, and at the same time, my conditions affected it, but it was a kind of a second role. And the most important that I started to create, and I was four. I always dreamed to become a writer or author, so I tried to create my first book, and or some kind of a creative product with the storytelling. And around 5, 6, I started to create my own games from different kind of materials. And later, I explore my passion to journalism, but specifically in technology journalism. And I still remember that my first piece was about NVIDIA. It's a corporation that in manufacture of video cards, and now also AI and VR stuff. And after that, I'm really start to explore companies in this field, and I built my first think tank around 2004-5. I became an active editor, but also influencer who support emerging companies in hardware field. And later, I became interested in data science as well. But second role of this journey was about my health. I was born with severe damage of neural and brain, and it's affected on my neural system, but also endocrine system. So at some point, I was forced to shift it to self-learning around maybe 11 or 12 years old. So for me, my entrepreneurial journey wasn't kind of a, oh, I would love to become an entrepreneur. It's so brilliant. No, it was actually the only way to teach myself because I wasn't able to learn in school. I always experienced severe fatigue, chronic pain. I was completely exhausted. I had issues in thermoregulation in my body, and I started to learn at home and write articles. And at some point, since I became passionate about creating my first project, I've been looking for a way to connect external companies, communities, and that's why I started to create my own agenda in kind of lifestyle. What is the best way for me to build my global virtual ecosystem for virtual connection, communication, learning, access to particular stuff. I've started to participate in some even remote conferences. It happened around 2005-6, so it's not about COVID-19. And in this way, I started to explore and create my own world, my own ecosystem and environment. And later, along with my passion to technology, I explore with I'm hugely passionate about music and art. Basically, at some point of my career and journey, I'm actually thought about what kind of choice I would love to make. Ever been focused on music and art? I have specifically been interested in industrial, experimental music and different kind of, I would say, mental experiences. So it was always pretty smart stuff I tried to create in technology. And basically, this combination of passion pushed me to explore peer-to-peer networks and social networks like MySpace, because I tried to promote my stuff. And in this way, I explore how I'm not happy with the state of the social networks. I explore what I would love to build a more connection between people and creators, make it more flexible, personalized. And in this way, I dived in data science, machine learning, and later I came up with, I joined the team with work on content curation, a startup, and became a CEO of this company. And later I expanded my work also advising and co-creating many startups related to data science and entertainment companies like who would love to predict the next big hit in Hollywood using big data, or in politics or music, or something like that. In later, also across such areas like education, healthcare. And maybe around 2014, I'm actually start to think how to connect my own journey, my resources, connections in technology with the actual impact. So I started to explore impact ecosystem. I've made my personal remote journey around the world, exploring how people make impact with technology in the US, Europe, Africa, Asia Pacific. And it helped me to come up with what I'm doing today. So I collect many ideas related to learning, well-being, gender, diversity, and I create my own vision and philosophy, how we're actually able to connect the dots between how I see inclusive and multi-diverse ecosystem and what we currently have in today's world.
Thanks, Yonah. I remember in probably one of your speeches, I think it was about augmented humanity. You intervened talking about also personalized education, right? So how can personalized education actually enhance and go towards, let's say, some sort of approach for augmented humanity? And it's like a middle step that can be done already now, because we have platforms and technology that helps and gives a boost on to personalized learning, right?
Yes, correct. Basically, it was a really interesting experience in Germany. And in terms of personalized education, it's also called adaptive learning and is driven by machine learning, would help to adapt your behavior over learning journey. And it helps to predict what kind of content is more aligned with your type of talent or ability. Why it's important? If we are talking about neurodiversity or types of brains, we have around 60, 70 type of brains, and it's based on individual differences, mental well-being, talents, abilities, and habits. Sometimes we think that mental differences is about disorders, but it's not correct. For instance, around 10% of people have some kind of psychopathic traits. So they lack empathy and they have a particular way to understand the world. At the same time, there are people who are better in learning through listening. Some people in better learning through reading or in repeating content. For instance, it's about me. Some people prefer long session like a 16, 19, 120 minutes in row. Some people prefer 20-minute session with the intervals in breaks, and it's about me. Some people prefer plain data and numbers, and some people prefer then content and knowledge is provided with some nutshell of storytelling and more kind of a human type of engagement and interaction. So adaptive learning is our opportunity to study and analyze your behavior in learning process, and align content, knowledge, experiences with your learning journey in order to make it more and more efficient. And it was a kind of a first level with how we've seen it maybe until 2020 and what we will have maybe until 2022, 2024. But now we're also able to make it even more personalized for so-called principle of a collaborative learning or learning on demand. Then we're able to align not only technology but also people, created like-minded ecosystem. When you create your hand-picked class using decentralization or a blockchain-driven platforms. I would love to build my own classroom with one professor from Stanford, one professor from Harvard, not only because it's a top universities, no, because I personally love these people and I love the way how they engage with audience, because I prefer storytelling and I would love to have my class with the storytelling approach. And as a kind of the next step is an opportunity to literally personalize every element of your environment and build your micro ecosystem from scratch, aligning technology, like-minded people, learning approach, learning materials, and so on.
between different types of information acquisition, learning, and processing. Since many times in the education system we have like one way that you have to adopt it and fight it if you don't match it. So sometimes people which have a more diverse way to acquire information sort of have to fight it through and are seen like maybe like a weaker individuals, right? So my question is, as nature is always balanced, where are some issues on one side, which can be on learning and other things, we can say that there's somehow some superpowers in diversity on the other side. Can you, if you agree on this, give some examples on superpowers that come from diversity, which probably leads to multitasking and stuff like this? I mean, you know that very well.
Yes. First of all, there are many facts related to dyslexic people who typically are able to use their imagination and sometimes data related skills better than other people. For sure, sometimes with superpower is exaggerated. For instance, in some point, there was a myth that 50% of NASA employees are dyslexic people. It's not true. But the fact is that many people with dyslexia actually have a pretty different type of working with information that make them more creative with a type of activities related to imagination, visualization, sometimes working with data and so on. And it's specifically similar to situation with autism. For sure, autism and dyslexia is completely different stuff, but autism have a very narrow focus related to problem solving in data. And that's why we have neurodiverse platforms like Divergent or Ultranodes. Startups would help people with autism spectrum to find the really good job in companies like Amazon or Google related to engineering and AI. And their superpower is a very limited focus. In typical life, it's not really good when your focus is limited, but in working with data, it's really good. At the same time, this type of ability has issues with communication, but in this particular work, we don't need communication at all. Or platform itself is built in the way that don't push people use communication in a classical way. So people just collaborate through chats or some limited interaction within agile sprint and development sprint. So it's a bit different and it's more or less okay for them. And for sure, there are many other examples. Maybe I'm not a doctor, and maybe I'm not able to share all of them, and I'm still continuing to explore, and I'll be able to share more examples in the future.
Perfect. Amazing. I love this part of diversity because it just gives you a glimpse of how the different types of human beings have this very internal potential that can be explored and extracted for different impactful purposes. From this point of view, what, as also you are an entrepreneur on this tech for good and the impact related market, what are the challenges there? I mean, we share this this vision. I myself work in the diversity field, and there's some sort of misalignment and misconception of the fact that impact is stands for non-profit, non-scalability, and so on. Is it because of the social world inside of it? Is it because we use different metrics that don't fit this kind of game? What's your view on this?
Yeah, it's a very good question. First of all, at some point, I spent even the whole podcast episode in order to talk with startups who work in this field. At the same time, I'm involved in this field as a judge. In Europe, I'm judge in learning well-being startups in Spain, and in Central Europe, and also I'm collaborate with ecosystem in Australia, in UK. I'm a part of a working group in London dedicated to disability. So I try to research this situation from different perspectives: technology, policy making, advocacy, and so on. So basically, it's a very interesting situation. Venture capital is the main way to fund startups, and though we have crowdfunding and sometimes bootstrapping. Venture funding is still the main model, and the main goal of venture funding is make money. So, in the end of the day, they evaluate startups not due to the diversity of their portfolio and some kind of emission-driven stuff, but mostly on the numbers they have in portfolio. And if we go to the most of the inclusive technologies, assistive technology, or some deep technology healthcare startups, we definitely not the best investment from the classic perspective, because in most cases you need to invest more money. They have a less profitability and sometimes zero profitability in the short or middle term perspective. And at the same time, there are much more risks in terms of sustainability. And if you would love to just make money, it's just easier to launch another Snapchat or some digital health app or a simple mental health tracker with control your well-being or your mood. But dealing with the complex stuff related to computer vision, facial recognition, and so on, it's always challenging. And in most cases, even though we're talking about successful startups from MIT or Harvard, when I use the word successful, I mean the whole product team are very good. They still struggle to get funding and become sustainable. And over the recent years, I've seen many situations when amazing teams just failed because we were not able to get this funding. Why it's happened? I already mentioned. So we just not able to fit these metrics. And venture capitalists were not able to help because venture capital business itself is not super profitable, and they're not philanthropists or evangelists of good in order to put them just because it's good situation. And in most cases, if you would love to bring the mission-driven stuff, you ever go to the specific ecosystems like Ashoka, who are focused on the mission-driven ventures, or Unreasonable Institute, or you're looking for governmental grants, and European Commission are very active in this field, or you try to go crowdfunding. And there are many startups, and I've seen many examples, who try to use crowdfunding or their own savings in order to back their first stages of development. But at the same time, I believe that there are much more opportunities to actually drive this opportunity forward. And I would love to share some examples. One of the parts of the algorithmic diversity from the venture capital perspective, it's what I call diversity of market setting. I had talks with people related to this moment, inclusive technology, and we agreed that one of the way to support inclusive technology, it doesn't sell it only as inclusive technology, but also for the bigger market. For instance, if you build a soft robotics or device for rehabilitation, in most cases, you're able to align this product also for as an assistive product for travels of healthy ones. So you have a bigger market and you're able to make more money and make your business more feasible and more attractive for venture capitalists. If you work on hearing or visual impairment solutions related to disabled people, you're also able to sell it as an augmentation solution for healthy ones. And again, make your market bigger. Or if you work on smart AI sticks, that help people with disabilities or neurological disorders or Parkinson disease. You're also able to use this technology for healthy market as a geolocation stuff and so on. And another case I see today is an active involvement of a mission-driven venture capitalist in niche venture funding. For instance, just a few months ago, one of my peers launched a fund platform exclusively focused on autism spectrum technology. And she's a woman. I don't exactly remember either she has kids with this particular spectrum, but basically the idea that many venture capitalists become mission driven because we face particular problems in their own life, in their own families. So we're able to create niche focused funding for disabilities, for autism, neurodiversity, particular mental health disorders. So it's a kind of alternative to philanthropy. And it works very well in order to drive growth for niche focused startups as well.
I know that you often mirror the Y Combinator metrics of unicorns to general meaningful metrics of a startup, and moreover to the impact oriented startups. Where is the misalignment? What's the what is the myopy into the understanding the correct metrics of traction?
Yes. First of all, Y Combinator doesn't care about impact at all. I mean, it's not a part of the venture capital agenda. I mean, let me explain. In investment world, we have a different direction of investments. We have a venture capital investments, and they focus on making money. We have an impact investing, is a type of investment we try to balance investment return, but also impact metrics. And the last one is a philanthropy that also involves different kind of grants in giving away money at all. So what you're talking about is an impact in investments, and is a type of approach driven by places like Singularity University, Ashoka, Unreasonable Institute, sometimes Mass Challenge. In terms of there is the line that help us to define how to balance impact in revenue and traditional business focused approach. So basically is about feasibility. So if you're able to make impact still being sustainable in long-term perspective, so is okay. But if you really become very, very dependent from on in external investments, you're not being sustainable without grants. So this model doesn't work. For instance, I've been involved in many ventures in Africa, and unfortunately, though many of them present the huge impact for the community, not very often they're able to demonstrate business model, but able to justify this impact. So it's always about balance and ability to reflect this balance in long-term perspective. So basically, I believe with what in the next years we will see in many ecosystems, not only in the Ashoka and Unreasonable Institute, with what I see, for instance, in 500 startups. Just a few months ago, we implemented ESG. It is a social responsibility programs, and also impact focused curriculum. So maybe in the next few years, we will see how they implemented this mindset of their venture capital investment program and approach. I don't know about Y Combinator. I believe they will still focus on Y Combinator metrics, but maybe in 3-5 years perspective, we will make some change as well.
Yeah, I mean, I say Y Combinator because I've seen it in some other speeches of yours as a comparison of, let's say, of the classic approach and the impact approach. So I myself, I cannot say I'm a big fan of Y Combinator. Also, being last year accelerated by by Techstars, so it's it's a completely different approach, which I respect a lot, because there is a sort of view, for example, in Techstars, concerning diversity, concerning respect, and this kind of approach in their ventures. And I think you also had an experience with them, right?
Yep.
And there's already a big difference. So fingers crossed for the future on that side. What are your let's say what's the secret sauce you're looking for when you're evaluating a startup in terms of traction? What do you look for in the impact market? Because I know many come on your table, and your advice is often is always very appreciated, and insights. So what do you look for?
Yes, there are several things. The first thing that I always evaluate is a team. I'm really, when I join particular teams, or I try to advise particular teams, I'm always care about people. What exactly it means? It means, for instance, if we plan to build a biotech technology, I try to see people who've done something amazing in biology as a researcher, for instance. And if we're talking about psychology, startup, or learning, I really care about people who try to make a difference, even not as an entrepreneur, but as a researcher, educator, maybe activist. So I'm really try to look for people who are able to make change no matter what kind of resources they have. So kind of mission-driven people who would love to change something in their lives and the lives of their community, as individuals, as a community leaders, as educators, professionals, researchers, specialists, and so on, is the first thing. Second thing is definitely as a traction, but traction typically divided in several directions. First thing, what we already discussed, is transparency and a realistic approach to business model. Even though we're talking about impact field, I'm still very focused on ability to be realistic about feasibility. So I prefer a team who know how to make money and spend them efficiently. So maybe it's not super profitable model, but it's still feasible, sustainable, and there is no cost which are bigger than revenues. And in terms of impact, typically I try to evaluate the scope of this impact, like we're able to change lives of 100,000 of patients or millions of students, and how exactly we make this change. Is a kind of an institutional change, or just kind of numbers, like we're able to make them life easier or faster, like by 20%. I prefer kind of a institutional or historical change. Then the whole behavior, habit, and approach is changed. It's like we jump from taxi to Uber, or how we use traditional education, but now we use Coursera. So it's about some kind of a completely different approach to something, and impact we're able to deliver for such type of technology, not just a number. And the last thing, I prefer that everything is driven by kind of a scientific approach. I'm really love then impact startups are driven by a strong alma mater or academia and universities. For instance, if we talk about deep tech startups, one of the best ones come from Oxford. For instance, I mentored Conception X in UK, and as a part of Oxford, and most of the team members are people with PhD who work in particular research many years, and they're also able to attract very powerful advisors who are drive not only business but scientific and technology part of this startup. And I'm sure that in the long-term perspective, they will be able to deliver their promise. Because, for instance, if we recall Theranos, it was a bubble in blood testing market. It not only the founder itself was a hustler without any experience in medicine, but also we had no actual expertise behind. So my main goal, I see the whole metrics of connection between promise and actual implementation on business, technology, and scientific levels. And I would say it's a kind of three main things I try to evaluate.
Thanks. That's really super insight. Super insight. By the way, guys, everybody who's following us in the moment, you can start asking questions. Yonah is here to answer as much as he can. I've seen some questions already. I will go with the first one, which is very interesting. And it's Nicholas asks, in your opinion, the benefit, the B Corp, movement could be a game changer for the entrepreneurial ecosystem?
Could you please repeat this question?
If the benefit corporation movement can be a game changer in the entrepreneurial ecosystem? Probably it's not. I don't know how familiar it is generally. It's the idea to of the companies to go just profit, and that they want to share different kinds of benefits, creating a system around it.
Yeah. Basically, I believe it doesn't matter how exactly you position themselves. For instance, there is opinion like we should go non-profit in order to make impact. For instance, even over my last answer, I mentioned Uber, I mentioned some other startup. I believe if you're able to make impact, not being impact-focused venture, is still okay. I mean, I'm a part of Brett Feld community. Brett Feld is a leader of Techstars, and we actually had a question and discussion about how to create impact-focused venture and how we should form them legally. Should we make them as a nonprofit or a kind of a social responsible corporation? I believe it's not about legal form. It's not about how exactly we use revenues. First, it is about how disruptive technology. If you're able to create a cancer cure, even if it's for profit, but the logic of business still fair. I mean, it's not about using low-cost workers and some kind of economy on everything. So it's still okay. So it's about scientific in approach in delivery of your promise first, and the way how we use business model is not about impact. It's just different question. I mean, impact is about technology, science, and fairness of your work first, and about ethic, not about the business model.
All right, and another question from Mia, which she asks, what is the difference, it's probably a challenging question, between neuro disorders and neurodiversity? Is it the same way, one right and one wrong on defining a different type of perspective? So from, I think it's a classic question.
Yeah, it's a classic question. First of all, from today's perspective, Neurodiversity is not a disease, it's just a type of diversity. So for instance, you're a completely healthy one, but there are some kind of micro differences in your brain, maybe in your frontal lobes or other parts of your brain related to empathy, communication, that define the way how you learn. For instance, even in psychology, in psychiatry, we have a disorders, but we also have a characters and type of characters. For instance, we have a schizoid personality, and is completely okay. It's not a disorder. It's just a kind of a lonely introvert type of person. At the same time, we have a schizoid personality disorder, or we have a schizotypical disorder, or we have a schizophrenia. It's about disorders. And the same with the neurodiversity. We have a autistic spectrum neurodiversity, or we have a personality with the neurological disorders. But neurological disorders is about some type of damage you came through. For instance, during the birth, then you was a young kid, you get some trauma of your head or injury, and it leads particular disorders. For instance, I have a disorder because I have a pituitary dysfunction, and it led some issues. So it's not kind of only the fact I was born neurodiverse, but I also have actual neurological disorder. So it's a both. It's just different stuff. One is a disorder, and our one is just a difference in type of diversity, type of your personality, type of your learning, and existence type.
All right. Another interesting question, which is actually a question I wanted to ask you, which is the what are usually the most common type of bias in the interaction of people with different kind of diversities?
Oh yeah. First of all, I would love to use my own experience, not in order to make it more personal. For
Yeah,
instance,
definitely.
For instance, some people who involved in business consider myself extremely narcissistic. Person with the exaggerated ego, because in some cases I prefer to work lonely. I avoid interaction, and after, for instance, maybe even speaking, I prefer to go lonely, and they think that I hate everyone, and it's pretty funny. At some point, they actually believed in this, and I started to tell more about my neurodiversity, because otherwise it led some issues with relationship, because people perceive myself in completely different and wrong way, and which why neurodiversity became huge, because not so many people know that 90% of people with autism are not employed, not because we are not able to learn, perform, or work, but because other job interview, they look shy, closed. They're not able to be funny, maybe use some facial expression. And in some cases, employer either think that they're not really smart, or they're not really communicative, or maybe they are evil, or something like that. Many, many biases based on the fact that there is a some kind of a social vision of normality. And what's what exactly I try to reimagine. There is no normality. There's a spectrum. There are people who prefer being extrovert, and they extrovert by nature, and some introvert people. There are people who prefer being lonely and work in this way. Some people prefer working groups. Some people need more and more social attention in order to be happy. And some people prefer to give away some emotional energy, and we way how we work also driven by the nature. So something like that.
Amazing. Yeah, I love this concept behind there's no normal. It's really very powerful and interesting to actually really explore and and dive into in a day-to-day life. A cool question is, how do you see impact technology 15 years from now? So it would be 2035.
Yeah. First of all, my forecast is more or less positive. Um, Unfortunately, most of the good things happen only through severe crises. And COVID-19 actually accelerated many positive changes, and I was a witness of these changes. Around February 2020, I've started to see how 500 startups, Techstars, and many other programs at first they gone remotely. They started to involve more people around the world, and they start to accelerate democratization of their programs. In few months after that, they incorporated social responsibility programs. Around August, 500 startups started collaboration with World Economic Forum. They launched initiative what's called Uplink, and it's focused on using startups against issues like climate change and so on. So actually, we see acceleration of this process. So my forecast is a positive. I believe ecosystem itself started become more and more actively involved in this. Before we've been like more talkers, like people who love to talk about it through TEDx, about some kind of big vision, big stories, but there's just a dramatic difference between talks and reality. For instance, I'm a person, I'm a technologist, but at the same time I'm a patient, and I use medication from 1960s. I prefer to make fun about this, because if you're involved in psychiatry science, you know that lobotomy was created around 15 in 60s, and it was restricted in 70s. So many people use medication before lobotomy became huge. And is it just dramatically bad? How actually not advanced society today? And it's very bad. But at the same time, just now we started to working to eliminate this gap. And I believe by 2050, we will see, on one hand, much more niche approach to venture capital in technology. Is the first thing. And it was what I've mentioned, like venture capitalists, philanthropists focus on particular mental health issues like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, major depression disorder. Um, um, Also, we will see more technologist programs focus on building algorithms for such type of stuff as a first thing. Second thing is a decentralization is a huge part in order to make algorithmic diversity a reality, because it helps to attract people to particular projects. Over the recent months, I had an opportunity to have talks with amazing teams. One was from Africa, and now one initially from India, but currently is global, who use hackathons, and they attract and crowdsource data scientists against social challenges. So we create particular challenge, and they gather data scientists in order to solve it. In Africa is this startup called Zindi Africa, and to the moment of our talk, they gathered overall 20,000. 12,000 of data scientists. And there is also another platform. It's called MDina, and they presented in 84 countries. And they try to solve problems like a particular type of disease, like malaria, or a pandemic, epidemic, healthcare, well-being, learning, climate change. So they crowdsource people around the world. They crowdsource talent. And one of the thing I just mentioned before, 500 startups, Techstars, we do the same. Before it was kind of allied clubs. We have a presence here, but we are pretty close. But nowadays we try to track mentors, talent around the world, because problems are huge, but talent are always very limited, and we always need to spend time in order to find relevant technologists, researchers, professors, scientists against particular challenges. And specifically, it's challenging in stuff like Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer, or mental health issues. Is a second thing, is a decentralization. A third thing is ethics. Um, eh, Currently, I'm a part of a ISDI program. It's a Spain-based acceleration and
Oh
educational.
yeah, they're doing the with the Toyota, right? Partner.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
amazing reality.
Yeah, they're driven by European Commission. In this summer, I was a judge, and this autumn and winter, I will be a mentor of startup. And the interesting thing that even in application, I needed to evaluate ethical and ethics consideration of startup related to data privacy, impact, the way how we work with users, how they collect and keep data, how they consider other ethical problems and challenges. And it's just the beginning. So when we see GDPR in Europe is not just a kind of a high level initiative. It's actually pushed through ecosystems and already works. And I already seen ethics focused programs everywhere. For instance, I'm a part of Data Ethics for All initiative in the US. And also this summer, we've created the whole ebook around 100 pages with materials, how to be ethical technologies. It's called All Tech is Human. Is a community, and they created ebook. And just the beginning, I mean, it's 2020, and I believe by 2015, it became a part of a school program, university program. And MIT, we have a ethics for inventors, and it's became more and more essential part of curriculum. And the way how we had lean startup or building of canvases, ethics is the same thing. And the best thing that now, maybe just in this year, I see how ethics becomes more universal thing. Before we talk about like a data ethics, AI ethics, but now we talk about ethics in universal sense, like a philosophy, like how to be ethical in general, in terms of how we communicate people, how we communicate society, how we communicate problems, challenges. And I believe curriculums in accelerators, in schools, in universities will become more and more holistic. And at some point, we've seen some kind of division between social science and technology education. Technology is just to become a huge, they get better salaries, but at some point we realize that this division wrong. We need to connect them again. We need to connect technology and philosophy, social science, statistics, and other things in order to understand problems better. Because otherwise, we've seen problems like a facial recognition. We have facial recognition, we have an AI behind it, but in 30% of cases, it makes error in terms of women, people of color, and it's not a problem of technology. It's the problem how we see and understand, for instance, ethnic diversity, how we understand social groups is about work of a social scientist and residents. But we have no social scientist. In most cases, people with liberal art education become growth hacker or marketers. So we have no actual social science people in technology companies. Nobody is responsible for understanding criteria behind technology, understanding social consequences, understanding society, in connecting the dots between technology, people, social groups, communities, classrooms, and so on. There is no people who are able to understand education in a nutshell. So, and there's a kind of a problem, and what's what I waiting for becoming huge in the next 10 years. And I think as we saw, so it's a niche, very deep approach to particular direction of technology and venture capital, decentralization, ethics, and comprehensive and holistic approach to education and curriculum, both in technology and venture capital worlds.
Thanks, Yonah, for this one. Amazing again. I think there's a good question right for this moment, because there's the empowerment of individuals like you that share and explain the importance of ethics, importance of diversity, of impact. But as we in Impact School, for example, always try to push, which is the meaning, the direction, the vocation of each individual into the game of change, so that everybody can do something about it, and and shape, the future, and adopt a good direction for humanity. From this point of view, the question is, what can a person, mostly youngsters nowadays, do in order to be more aware about ethical and tech issues or opportunities and diversity? What can you do?
Changing completely free stuff of the internet. Just a few months ago, we have created completely free ebook. Second, join open source programs, curriculums, courses to learn more. And third, create your own stuff or become a employee or team members in existing teams as a developer, entrepreneur, startup founder, or co-founder.
Great, very empowering answer. There's an interesting question. I'm curious about this. What is, if you can share, a particularly funny or unique moment of your life where, let's say, the theme is the diversity in itself? Probably it's about a miscommunication or funny stuff which can happen in the human interaction.
Oh, there were many moments. Sometimes it wasn't actually funny. It was pretty sad. In some point, yeah, it was a case. Oh yeah, I remember one case. I was a mentor of a team related to impact. It was an organization. And I would say at this point, my health was specifically bad. So most of my time, I just listened to them. And over our conferences and meetings, I just listened to all of them. And at some point, they thought that I'm just always happy with everything that happened. And they thought that since I don't share active criticism, so I'm completely happy. I'm just fell in love with the team. And then when I started to criticize them, they said that I have a multiple personality disorder. So we thought that it's impossible. So it's the same person, because they thought that I'm just a 100% kind and I'm happy with everything. And you're always completely calm. Why are you so aggressive? I mean, how you're able to criticize us? And then I said, like, I'm just listening. I mean, I prefer to listen first and after that make a judgment. They said, no, it's just different personality. I mean, it's impossible. Oh, it was a funny, but it was a stupid, pretty sad situation at the same time, because they tried to block one of my communities, and I fired them.
Yeah, I myself also experienced a lot of issues in the diversity field. I think where there's enough awareness and smart approach into this, it can actually be funny for both sides, but sometimes, yeah, there's a lot of misunderstanding, and yeah, true. Perfect, Yonah. I think we're right in time, probably 1-2 minutes late, but we've done, I think, a great job. It's a lot of interaction, and I think it was really great live, a lot of cool content. I will probably watch it over again to learn more from the words you shared with us. So again, thanks a lot from myself, from the Impact Schools community, from everybody that has seen it today. And keep spreading the word about diversity. Keep doing your job, which is amazing. And yeah, hope we can host you again in Italy, probably after COVID, maybe even physically in a good event, so we can share more time together. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was a really, really great opportunity. Have a beautiful day. And thanks to all listeners, guests of this event. Thank you.
Thanks. See everybody.